بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. So today we are going to start a new chapter, which is the theory of right and obligation. Right is actually حقوق, and obligation is actually duyun. So you can say haq, right, and then dain, obligation. So previously we talked about theory of property. And the next chapter, probably in the next class, we are going to talk about ownership, milkiyah. So now you have three things, right? After we discuss the introductory chapters, we talked about fiqh, usul al-fiqh, we talked about maqasid, sharia, we talked about the legal maxims, right? Then we started come into the chapters that related to economics. Then we started talking about the property. Then we talked about the classifications in properties. So now we're going to talk about the rights. So these rights also related to the property. In the next class, we are going to talk about the ownership, milkiyah, and that is also relevant to this topic of right. So remember, all these three topics are related. Sometimes the same sort of examples can be given, but the context could be different, but the area of the interest, the topic is actually relevant, related. So theory of property, theory of right, and then ownership. So what exactly is the right? We're going to talk about in definition. Then there are pillars of right. Then we're going to talk about around 5 types of classification of rights. So we're going to talk about the rights of Allah and the rights of human, financial and non-financial rights, rights over a person, and rights over a property. What are the rights that can be waived? What are the rights that cannot be waived? And is there any rights that heritable, mirath? And also there are rights that it is non-heritable. Finally, once we finish talking about classification, then we're gonna start talking about the abuse of rights, because there are so many rights are there. At the same time, there's a possibility of abuse. That's what we're gonna talk about, misuse or abuse of rights. So to start with, let us talk about the definition first. And before that, we need to know that, there are various rights and obligations. First of all, I would like to make it clear what exactly right and what exactly obligation. So right is something that, that you have the someone, it's like, rights is one and the obligation is the next level. So meaning to say that you may have to do something for someone, right? At the same time, you may require something for someone, right? So it seems like party A, party B, you have to do something for someone. Let's say if you are a father and you have to take care of your children. So now children has a right on you, right? At the same time, for you, it's an obligation. Now your child has a right. The child has a right so that he can get the education, he can get the food, he can get the place for stay, right? And the ride, these are the things that, because the child has a right. But now, when it comes to you, it is obligatory upon you that you should take care of your child. So now the same thing can go to a ruler and subject, right? For example, the king and the pupil, or the teacher and student, right? Or husband and wife, or the manager and the servant, right? So it could be the responsibility everywhere. That's why Islam has imposed various types of rights and obligation on every human being. A person should fulfill his obligation towards Allah, towards his own self nafs, towards other members of the society, and towards the physical nature and the environment. Right? This is where we are not only talking about the human related rights, the human related obligation. Of course, we are talking about habla min Allah, which is the rights, the obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we talk about hablu minan nas, which is the obligations or the rights towards the human being, the fellow citizens. Then we also talk about hablu minal kaun. The kaun is actually environment, the universe, the planet. So what we supposed to do for this planet? Can I just cut all the trees without any reason? Can I kill the insect without without any purpose? Can I kill that? Can I slaughter this? Can I abuse this water? Can I, pollute pollute the air, or pollute the river? Right? Can I make big waves of the sounds, and and all those animals around, they get frightened? For example, usually during the festival time, people are always love to go for fireworks. So these fireworks, it seems like it's a kind of it's a kind of beauty that we see because it is a kind of entertainment for our eyes. But at the same time, we need to think about those animals, that how I mean, how frightened they are because of the sound, because of that fire, you know, especially the cats, the dogs, and other animals. So these are the things. So we need to think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hablu min Allah, hablu min nas, and then hablu min al. He should obey Allah's laws that imposes these obligations on him, and at the same time entitles him to certain rights. So this is what we need to know about the right and obligation. Let's talk about the definition exactly. All right. Haq means, that is what haq in Arabic plural is hukuk. Haq is right, hukuk is rights. It literally means proper, right, true, authentic, valid, established, a just claim, confirmed as a truth, duty, or an obligation. The jurists define haq as a prescription acknowledged by the Sharia that gives authority or right and assigned responsibility or duty. So this is what actually the fuqaha define as right. So it is brought by the Sharia. So what I mean by right, right means it's brought by the Sharia. It is actually postulated by the Sharia. So that when the Sharia gives you that, brought you that, it gives the authority and assigns responsibility or duty. So it gives you, for example, if you are the guardian, you have to do certain things. All right. If you are the teacher, you have to follow certain things. If you are if you are the husband, then you should do for some. You have to do something for wife, and if you are a wife, then you have to do something for the husband. The same thing goes to father and son, or father and daughter. The same thing goes to brother and sister, within the siblings. The same thing goes to, the Zul Qurba, meaning the relatives, Silatul Rahim. All these things goes. This definition includes both the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the rights of humans. The source that confers right or imposes an obligation is Sharia. Remember, all these rights, why you have to do that? We may think, okay, I'm a father, so I have to do it. You may think I'm a brother, so you have to do it. But most of all, we need to know this, that these obligations are coming from Sharia, because we are all following Sharia. As a Muslim, we are all following Sharia. It is not only that naturally that we have to do, but it is also technically, it is also administratively, it is also, legally, we have to actually follow this. If we don't do that, uh, any uh, any fellow, I mean any people who supposed to receive rights from you, if they didn't receive those rights, they may go and complain against you in the Sharia court. Right? A son can go and say against of his father, saying that he abuses me, he didn't give me my sustenance. A wife can go and talk against the husband, right? A student can go and talk against the teacher, right? Because that is the reason why, when these rights given, it's given by the Sharia. If you didn't follow, the person can go and complain against it. It is not just to say that it is naturally human, so whether you like it or not, it is what it is. Okay? It's not like that, right? It's not like that. You have all the right to ask your right, to get your rights. If you didn't get it, you have to go and complain to the authority. So, what are the pillars of the right? So, there are three pillars of the right. Number one is a sahib al haq. Number two, mahal al haq. Number three, man alayhi al haq. Right? First of all, the owner of the right. Okay, the owner of the right. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it is basis Allah and us, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a sahib al haq. If it is like between human being to human being, right, then human become the sahib, sahib al-haq. For example, if it is the thing between myself and the university, then the university becomes sahib al-haq. The second pillar is mahal al-haq. So where exactly the right can be practiced, the right can be exercised. The first one is the person who holds, I mean, who is the owner of the right, who is the owner of the right, so that, for example, Allah is the owner of the right, meaning to say that I have to pay, I have to pray, I have to pray. So Allah has the right that, he can ask me anytime that I can pray, I have to pray for him. Why? Because he is the one who created me. He is the one who created me. Now, a son can become Sahib al Haq because a son can become the owner of the right because because the father is the reason why the son came to this universe, right? So the son has the rights, and the father has to fulfill the rights. So now son will become the Sahib al-Haq. And then the Mahal al-Haq is actually, for example, in Allah, as I told you, worshipping. Worshipping is actually the thing that you have to exercise. All right? So the worshipping will become the subject, Mahal al-Haq, the subject. Or let's say if a son, between son and father, then the giving sustenance, the proper brought up, the proper house and education will become the subject matter, will become the mahal al-haq. Number three is the one, the person who is under the obligation, who is under the obligation, man alayhi al-haq. Example, the borrower is under obligation to return his debt. So now, whoever has to, whoever has to do the thing, he will become man alayhi al-haq. Like I told you that right now, who who is the person should do the obligation, then he become man alayhi al-haq, which means the person who supposed to fulfill the responsibility. So now, in Allah and human, who will become number three, who will become man alayhi al-haq, human will become man alayhi al-haq. Human become the person who's supposed to fulfill the obligation. Right now, the second example has father and son. So son will become the owner of the right. Son will become the owner of the right, but the father will become what? The father will become the one who is under the obligation. All right? Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
why is that man alayhi haq? Why not man alayhi dain?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so now why it is not thine, why it is haq? Okay, because um, the word haq can always can always cover all sort of obligations, not only the money related obligations, not only you know not only the silatul rahim obligations, not only the worshipping obligation, so it will cover everything. That's why the word haq can also mean responsibility, can also mean duty, can also mean obligation. So maybe it confusing you, but if you want to write it down in your paper, yes, please write it down. Man alayhi dain. But at the same time, dain, it doesn't mean that only goes to debt, because dain has a different. Dain also has a meaning of debt, right? So now we don't want to put it together. We don't want to say that it is only relates. It only relates to financial matters. That's why we want to put the word haq so that it can cover everything. But you are right. The meaning right now we are bringing, the context that we are bringing now is actually man alayhi dain. All right. But at the same time, we prefer to say the word haq because it has to cover everything. All right. So the borrower is under obligation to return his debt. So now, who will become sahibul haq? The person who give the
Debtor.
money. Exactly. So the person who give the money, he will become sahibul haq. The person who borrow the money, he will become man alayhi al-haq. All right. Okay, what are the classification of the rights? So we have five sort of classifications of the right. The first one is, okay, the rights of Allah and the rights of human. And then we're going to talk about the combined rights. That is also quite interesting part to talk about, because there are certain things where Allah and human comes together. Okay, first one, Haqqullah. It refers to the rights that He has upon His creatures. The rights of Allah are divided into two main groups: exclusive rights, and then we have okay, exclusive right means what? It includes his right on human being to worship him, to obey his laws, and to pay zakat and penances. So meaning to say that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, obey the commands, right? uh, and avoid prohibitions, right? Al-amru min Allah wa nahi anil munkar. So these are the things actually, exclusive rights. Rights which are intended for public interest, it's not exclusive, but it's a public, meaning to say that the same Allah is the one who also gives as sustenance, which actually, for example, Allah says many places in Quran that He is the one who, brings the water. He is the one who brings the crops, the harvest. He is the one who brings, who put the mountain so that He can bring the balance in the earth, in the planet. So so many. Allah also says that He is the one who gives us lots and lots of you know stones and diamonds and even pearls in the ocean, right? He also says that He is the one who gave different colors of fruits and trees and vegetables and everything. So now this is also considered as a public interest, or not specifically assigned to any individual, right? It is not individually, it's like publicly upon everybody. That's the reason why hablum minallah is important. At the same time, hablum minal kaun also very important, because all these things that Allah says sakhara lakum, which means that Allah has given you the control so that you can control it. It doesn't mean that you can abuse it. So, because since Allah said that whatever in the earth and the heaven, we have given to you, we put you as a vicegerent, as a representative, as a khalifa, so you can have all these. It doesn't mean that we can go there and we can abuse all these things. That's why there is mineral wealth, rivers, and forest. These are called the rights of Allah, as they are beneficial to the community or the public at large. But the exclusive rights are the one that what as a Muslim you should do. As a Muslim, I should pray. As a Muslim, I should pay zakat. As a Muslim, I should perform Hajj and also fasting. These are the things. Okay, what are the specification of Allah's right? The rights of Allah cannot be abolished. Okay, remember the specification. We're also going to talk about specification of human right. All right. So let's talk about Allah's right. Number one, cannot be abolished, because um, uh, there is no ustaz can come and tell that, okay, you don't have to pray today. All right, there is no any authority can come and say that, okay, everybody has to pay zakat, but you don't have to pay zakat because I waive your zakat. you know an officer can come and waive your tax, but no one can waive your zakat, because it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, no one can tell you that, okay, you don't have to pray today. Cannot, because cannot be abolished. No person can absolve or exempt another person from his obligation towards Allah. Let's say I cannot pray for my father. I cannot do. I cannot pray. I cannot pay zakat because someone didn't pay. Huh? So everyone has to do on his own. I cannot do the fasting for somebody who didn't do in the past. Right. The rights of Allah also cannot be inherited, meaning to say that my father didn't pay zakat. Can I pay zakat today? My father didn't do fasting. Can I do fasting today? Right? These are the things cannot be inherited. The heirs are not obliged to fulfill an act of worship such as prayer, which the deceased didn't perform. The offender who repeatedly violates the rights of Allah is punished once. A person who has committed theft many times is punished once. The enforcement of the rights of Allah is the duty of the state. Okay, this is also a duty. That's why in many places they ask us to close the shop during the prayer time. It's a kind of enforcement by the state. It can be done. Number B, the second one is actually the rights of humans, hakun nas or hukukun nas. They refer to those rights which are intended for the protection of the private interest. All right. Generally, Example, all human beings are entitled to the protection of their religion, life, property, health, and honor. This is what, generally speaking, Maqasid Sharia, right? It can be also specific. For example, in a sale contract, purchaser has a right to own the object which he has bought, and seller is entitled to receive the price. So this is just happening, I know. This is simply happening when you go and you buy something, you buy it, and you, after you buy it, and then you pay the money to the seller. So you are the buyer and you are the seller, you are the purchaser. So purchaser has the right to own the object. So once you bought it, it is yours, so you become the owner of that certain things. So that is your right. You just got your right to. So the moment the phone was in showroom, it was not yours. But the moment you paid the money and then you receive your phone in your hand, then it becomes yours, and you have the right. You has the right to own that object. You has the right to open it and use it, right? At the same time, the seller also is entitled to receive the price. So this is a kind of economic related example, by the way. There are so many other examples as well. What are the specification of human rights? The enforcement of the rights of human are entirely at the option of the individual who have them. He may demand his rights or waive them. Okay, let's say you go to the phone shop again, and then you wanted to get it from the showcase, and then he gave it to you from the showroom, and then you are looking at it, and then you are happy with it. It happened to be there that he is your friend, and suddenly he said, okay, you don't have to pay. Okay, you don't have to pay for the iPhone 12. Oh, you'll be very happy to hear that, right? Suddenly he says that, okay, I owe you one, I want to give it away free. Then it is possible, because it is possible for someone to waive his right. The waive is waiving his right to receive the money from you, which is actually possible. Also, the right of shufa'a, which means the last time we discussed about it. If you are selling your part of the land, and you are partners with others, and you must ask your partners first. You must ask your partners first. So this right, if the partner says that, okay, I want to let it go, if the partner himself, he can say that, okay, I want to let this go. So you can ask, you can look for another buyer. Then it is possible if he himself, the partner himself, let it go. The offender of a private right is punished as many times as the right is violated. See that? Let's say it's been violated, right? Rights. Let's say he didn't pay the money, and he has to be punished. If you do that again, he has to be punished. If you do it again, he has to be punished. But when we talk about hukukullah, there's a difference. If someone didn't pray, there is no punishment in this world. But if he keep on doing and doing and doing, he will be punished only in hereafter. The punishment is only once in the hereafter. But for hukukun nas, every time someone abuse, someone didn't do, he will be punished, right? Person can exempt another person from his obligation towards him. Example, a seller may exempt a purchaser from paying the price, or a wife may exempt her husband he paying him a dower, which means mahar. So mahar is actually a wife supposed to get it from the husband. This is also human related financial matter, right? So now, as I told you, since this is not hukukullah, this is like hukukun nas. Even a wife can waive her mahar. She may say that, okay, you don't have to pay me mahar. I accept the marriage without mahar. It is up to the wife, but no one can force it. It is totally up to her, right? Whether whatever the number she want, the mahar she can decide. She want 100, she want 1,000, she want 100,000, or she want million ringgit. It is up to her. All right. Distinction between the rights of Allah and the rights of human. The rights of Allah cannot be exempted, you know already. but a seller may exempt a purchaser from paying the price. What is the combined rights? This is where I was telling you two things comes together. For example, qadhaf or retaliation. What I mean by qisas is something that you and let's say there is a let's say someone killed someone, right? There is a punishment. The court will come and punish you, with the punishment of hanging, for example, right? The court will hang the person that who killed someone intentionally. Okay, there's a killing intentionally, there is a killing unintentionally, mistakenly. There's a different thing. Mistakenly, if someone killed someone mistakenly, he won't be hanged for that unless the family agree to receive ransom, right? So it is possible. But if someone killed someone intentionally, then the court will decide hanging him, right? So now this is what we call qisas. This is a kind of qisas that we are practicing. There is two things comes together. One is, of course, I killed a human being, so because of that, the family of that person, the family want me to be hanging, hang. So now, um, at the same time, this is also following the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rule says that you should not kill each other, right? That's why the Quranic verse say, "Walakum fil qisasi hayatun." Allah says in Quran, when you practice this, when you practice this court of law, qisas, then there is a life for you. Because why Allah says there's a life? Because when we practice this, then no one will dare to kill someone, right? Because before he killing someone, he will be thinking, okay, if I kill him, okay, tomorrow I also will be hanged, I also will be killed by the court. Then he will stop killing. See, so that fear will make many people safe. All right. The other one is qadhaf. Qadhaf is actually, defamation. Defamation, if someone unnecessarily defame someone, saying that, okay, I saw that girl was with that person alone, and then they were in the, they were coupling, they were dating, this kind of defamation. This kind of defamation is actually strictly prohibited in Sharia. At the same time, the court also has to give punishment. All right. Okay. The second classification is the financial and non-financial rights. I think this is much. I think you know most of it. All right. Financial haq, financial rights, al-haq al-mali, are those that are related to the property. Example, tenant has the right to stay in the house. A lender in loan contract has the right to claim his loan. Intellectual property, options of defect, which we will discuss later. The khiyar, option of different. Modern derivatives and options. Even hiwala, tradability is one of the important issue concerning financial rights. Creditor, debtor, these are the things are there. This is all, I think, whatever comes with financial values and it has the rights, it comes under financial rights. There are so many other things will come under non-financial rights. For example, the rights of parents. Okay, so that the parents has to take care of the son, but the parents won't be paid for it, right? The rights of minors, the rights of husband and wife, the custody, the rights of citizens, authorities, and states. So these are the things non-financial rights. Number three, we have rights over person and rights over property. So there are two things we are going to talk about. The first one is the rights over persons. Um, these are the rights that the Sharia has assigned to one person over another. So see now, again, the same thing, the same example can come again. As I told you, classification. As I told you, the example of of your the pakaian, the clothes, that you actually use it. So you have so many things you can also actually categorize it according to your need. So now we are categorizing in here. Some examples can come in so many other classifications, right? So rights over human is actually the party to a contract of sale or under obligation to exchange the sold items and the price. So the parties, uh, you know, uh, will become under obligation. So now this is like we call rights over person. A debtor is under obligation to settle his debt to the creditor, and a husband is under obligation to provide maintenance to his wife. The right over a person is on the shoulder zimma of another person. It does not depend on the existence of property. The right of a creditor over a debtor is not terminated if the sold item is destroyed. The right over a person cannot be claimed from another person. So this is all gives you the same example that we gave you earlier, but it's 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 actually talks about the rights over person. All right, whatever that person supposed to do, whatever the obligation that person supposed to do, it comes under rights over person. Then you have rights over property, right? So this is something to do not about human being, it is about the property, right? It is confined to the property itself, like the right of ownership, which enables the owner to use or exploit his property within the limits ordained by law. For example, you bought this phone, so this is your property now. So there are rights over a property, which means that what are the things I can do with this phone? I can use it, I can text, I can send messages, I can watch video, I can do my assessment, my assignment, and everything. This is all actually comes together with this property. At the same time, there is also a few things that I cannot do with this property, which is actually I cannot abuse this property. I cannot, destroy this property without any purpose. I have to maintain this property, right? So if you have the house, it's a kind of property, of course, and then you need to take care of that house, and maintenance of the house comes under the rights over property. So right over property, properties are abolished when the properties are destroyed, and the contract of lease is terminated when the asset is destroyed. The rights over property are given priority over the rights over person. Example, in settlements of debt, pledges, debt is settled prior to other debts. Those who have rights over a person are usually treated equally. Example, in cases of bankruptcy or settlements of debts of the deceased, the debts are settled pro rata, and no one and the one creditor is got given priority over other creditors. So this is all actually this is all will happen, when there is a property over, I mean, when there is a rights over a property. Let's say there is a property, and there are of course rights surrounding to that property. Let's say you are the tenant, you are not the owner, but you can also become the property of the usufruct. Remember last time we talked about usufruct, manfaah, all right? So right now, there is a house, there is a house, there is a owner, and then the same house, but owner does not reside in that house. So a tenant comes and lives in there. So now there is a owner of the house, and then there is a owner of the usufruct, right? So owner of the manfaah, because benefits, because he is actually there for the sake of benefits, he pays the rentals. So now the owner is supposed to do some sort of maintenance, because the house is he is the owner of the house. That's why there are certain things when you have when you are living in the house, there are certain things that you need to do. The tax payment, the tax, sukai, chukai, that you're supposed to pay for the house, and then the dumb water is going outside. There's a payment for those cleaning. Those kind of things. As a owner, he's supposed to do the maintenance. But at the same time, the person who lives inside, yeah, he's a tenant, but he becomes the owner of the usufruct. He also supposed to make sure that he pays the electric bill and the water bill. He also keeps the house clean and also the paint and everything, right? This is all. But once the house is somehow destroyed, if the house is not there, no more there, then also the lease also will be terminated because of that. All right. So the same thing comes to pledges, debt, prior to other debt. Because if you have rahan, for example, rahan also comes to the same thing. You have something to give as a rahnu, and then you borrow some money. All right. So as long as as long as that you are able to keep that rahnu safe, then you can actually borrow the money. But if there is no rahnu, then you cannot actually borrow the money. So these are the things, we call it rights over a property. What about the rights that can be waived? Is there any rights that can be waived, and is there any rights that cannot be waived? All right, again, the same examples will come. Of course, rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be waived, right? No one can say for someone that, okay, you don't have to pray for the next 2 years. You don't have to pray, you don't have to pay zakat for next 2 years. Cannot be waived. Even the government cannot even waive anybody's, which is actually rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the other side, hukukun nas, everything, all the private rights, all rights of humans and private rights can be waived, can be waived. But there are exceptionals are there. There are some exceptionals. There are certain human rights cannot be waived. The certain human rights cannot be waived. For example, future rights cannot be waived, as a partner could not waive his right of preemption in a property which is not offered for sale. Why? Because these rights is not into existence. So number one is a future rights, meaning to say, you didn't actually buy a product. uh, this is also something to talk about, today in Islamic finance or any other conventional finance. Before you buy certain products, how can you actually waive the right, isn't it? So now, one example they are giving here, like a shufa'a, like I told you, preemption. This preemption is actually your right. If you are the partner or you are the neighbor, then it has to go to you first, then it has to go to others. But someone cannot waive that right even before someone buy the property. It is impossible. The same examples can be given. It's like an imaginary contract people do now. um, some sort of imaginary contract, meaning to say that I'm going to buy this. When I buy this, you also become partner of this, so can you waive your partnership? But the thing is, the contract didn't even happen yet. So that's why future rights cannot be waived. Then the second one is actually called B, authoritative rights established by the Sharia. For example, there's a guardianship. Father is the guardian of the son. If there's no father, the grandfather will become the guardian of over their children. But this one is Sharia is the one who gave the guardianship. Remember, it's not the court, it's not the pupil, it's not the human being. Sharia is the one who made guardian, so that one cannot be waived. Rights which, if waived, may result in changes to the law cannot be waived. Right? For example, a person cannot waive his right to use his own property or disown or abandon it. The property would become without an owner, and the law does not allow it. So this is also a problem today. There are so many properties, it's not being touched, it's not being maintained, it's left alone, it's abandoned. You can see so many cars on the road that is been abandoned, and then there are so many houses it's been abandoned. So what happens because of that? When there is a house abandoned, nobody using it, the owner is not actually maintaining it, then who lives inside. So many animals lives inside, so many unnecessary things lives inside. Even snakes also may live inside. So because of that, the surrounding, the neighborhood will get hurt. The same thing goes to the so many other properties is being there owned by someone, but if he disown it, when you say that I don't, it is not, if he says, he has to transfer the ownership to somebody, he has to sell the property to somebody, unless there will be issue, right? So this is what we call, if it waived, it may result in changes, so that it cannot be waived. The last one, I think this is the last one, D. Okay, yeah. D is the last one. The rights which, if waived, other person rights will be affected. For example, mother cannot waive her right in the custody of her children. That's why this is all a real blood bonding, blood relation. A mother cannot say that I want to waive my right on my child. I'm no longer your mother. A son cannot come and say that I'm no longer your son, right? But husband and wife can say that. Husband can say that I'm no longer your husband. A wife can come and say that I'm no longer your wife. But father, mother, brother, siblings, right? Grandfather, grandmother, these are the things they want. They cannot say that. All right. So that's why these are the rights cannot be waived. Okay. I think this is the last one, heritable, and then we will talk about misuse abuse. Okay, this is the last classification called heritable, non-heritable. The same examples can come. Is there any rights that can be inherited? All right. Rights intended to serve the purpose of guarantee can be inherited. Example, a pledged property can be kept by the heirs of the pledgee after the later dies. For example, there is a uh, uh, for example, there is a rahnu, right? There's a property can be kept by the heirs of the pledgee after the later dies. For example, you know, I borrow some money from my father. I borrow some money from your father uh, for the purpose of borrowing money from your father. I gave some property as a rahnu, all right, as a pledge. So now, what happened that um, your father passed away, and then the inheritance, the people of that person, I mean the children of that person, the one who passed away, can keep that property until I settle, until I pay back the money that I borrow from your father. All right, you got it. So now that kind of rights can be inherited. Understand? All right. Rights related to immovable property, hukukul irtifaq, such as the right of water or the right of way, can be inherited. Very good. You see, there is a land, but there is also, there's a water flow in that land. But that water flow is actually coming, and then also it is not that you bought it, because you bought the land, you didn't buy the water flow. That water flow is public and is for everybody, but still you have a right. It is called hukuk al-irtifaq. you know this hukuk al-irtifaq, I think probably we will discuss again in the next class. This is actually something, let's say you are in Taman living, you have the house, you bought a terrace house in a Taman, in a in a city or in a bandar, wherever it is, then you also entitled to use the garden. Huh? You are entitled to use the playground in that garden, because the playground is for everybody, right? But you are not the owner of the playground, because you are the owner of the house, but you also entitled to use the road, for example. You are not the owner of the road, but you are entitled to use the road. You are entitled to use the playground, because it's for everybody, right? So now, if you are inherited to that property, these kind of rights also can come to you. Understand? These are the rights that follow the land and are included in it. Anyone who inherits owns the lands and also owns these rights. Options of determination or defects can be inherited as subservient to the property. For example, you bought a product in option, right? Khayar, and then let's say I bought a phone which I can use it, but I have to return within 1 week if there is a problem, right? Suddenly in second day I passed away, then my phone goes to my child. My child found the problem in the third day or the fourth day, so he can actually go back and return, because he can also inherit other thing. Options of conditions also the same, or inspection cannot be inherited among okay, this is different. Options of conditions, options of determination is something that determination is something that given if there is a defect, you can return back. But options of condition or inspection cannot be inherited among Hanafi and Sahiri, according to majority can be. But it's okay. This option of condition is actually shurutul khiyar. But it's okay. We will inshallah discuss this, particularly this one. Inshallah, we will discuss in the second half of the semester, because we have one dedicated chapter for options. All right. Non-heritable rights. Is there anything non-heritable? Yes, there are things related to the person and end with his death, and no right left for him after his death. For example, rights related to his thought, honesty, right? Guardianship over his oneself or his money. These are the things no one can. These are the non-heritable rights, yeah, because his thought and honesty, his own self, or his, I mean, guardianship over his own, the characteristic of the guardianship, the protectionship. So this one is belong to him. This one cannot be given. The guardianship cannot be transferred to somebody. I was a guardian for this person, this minor. I passed away so that my son will become the guardian. No, cannot. Right? The same thing I will say that I was the ruler. Suddenly I passed away, so my son will become the ruler. No, cannot. that is This is also kind of thing that Sharia is not imposing it. That's why Sharia is not imposing. When Sharia says a son cannot become guardian because I'm a teacher, I'm a lecturer. Do you think my son can become the lecturer? No one will accept it, right? So everybody has to earn it. That is the thing. Okay, the last part, misuse or abuse of rights. If a person does something which is not his right, this is considered injustice. However, if he does some action which is his right, but he does it in an improper way, it is considered the misuse of right. Person has to exercise his right in a person way that will not harm others, and it should be in accordance with Sharia teaching, right? So when the exercise of right lead to a greater harm to the society, an individual is deprived of his right in order to prevent a common harm. For example, hoarding is prohibited, monopoly, black marketing, stopping the rider. This is called talaqi al-rukban, which means that someone, a farmer, is bringing the vegetables from his farm, and before he reached the Selayang market, and someone before the Selayang market took everything from him, purchase everything from him so that he can make double price in the market. So this is called talaqi ar-rukban, stopping the rider, which is actually not the right thing. We might say that it is a genius way of doing business, but it is also abusing somebody's right, because the same farmer can come and sell it in the market price, but you stop him before. And today is impossible because now we know the price, but I'm talking about earlier, or in any other way today, without making him knowing the real price, and you stop him, and then you stop him, and then you make him not to know the price, then you buy it, which is actually wrong. Sale of weapon during the civil war, sale of grapes for wine. Remember last time we told you, sale of grapes for the wine making are prohibited. This is all actually will lead to a greater harm to the society, right? Example, a person cannot make a will, wasiyah, that would result in a harm to the creditors of the head. For example, I have to pay hundreds and thousands of ringgit to to the creditors. I cannot simply write my will saying that, okay, all my money goes to this institute, all my money goes to this masjid, right? Because I cannot give all the money to masjid, even though I am willing to give, because my hair, my children, they have to get their part. I can only give one third. The two-third of my property will go to my children. A person suffering from a mortal disease may divorce his wife, but this exercise of his right cannot deprive the wife from inheritance. This is something different. If someone has a mortal disease, let's say cancer or mental illness, or kind of coma, for example, of course, it may divorce his wife. But this exercise, usually, if someone divorces his wife, cannot uh, it will deprive the wife from inheritance. But because of the mortal disease, and because he cannot live together, and then this exercise of his right cannot deprive the wife from inheritance. A person is prevented from raising a wall of his house in a way that would harm the neighbors, by preventing light and air, because this is also kind of abusing right that today we are experiencing. No, it is, if you say it is up to you that you can build anything you want, but I cannot build something which is harming others, even though I'm building in my own place. I'm not building something in your place. I'm building in my own place. But by building in my own place, let's say I'm raising the wall, because of that I'm preventing light and air, or I'm preventing the opening window. These things usually comes when they have the houses together, right? And then I cannot put the window in somebody's front of houses, so that I can affect the privacy. I need to think about people's privacy as well. When a certain action is done without proper care, as a result of which harm would be caused to others, this person is held liable. For example, surgeon performs an operation with negligence, as a result of which the patient suffers or dies, right? So he becomes liable. The surgeon, if he unintentionally happened, is okay, but if he did it with negligence, then he will become liable. A leisure is under duty to make certain that the house or the car has rented out or in proper condition and produce the necessary benefits. So these are the things, whether it's a house or the car has rented out, it should be in the proper condition, and it should produce necessary right benefit. If you give a car which is not moving, if you give the house where no one can stay properly, maybe it's a leak, these are the things actually abuse. So that's all from me today. So let me just show you the attendance.